Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak to you, distinguished leaders of the countries of the European Union. Of course, special thanks to our hosts, to our Lithuanian friends, and first of all, to the Speaker of the Parliament of Lithuania. We see that she made special efforts in order to make the case of Eastern Partnership one of the main topics of this conference. Of course, it is very difficult at the moment to start conversation about Eastern Partnership without mentioning, first of all, the Ukraine. Our friends in Ukraine, who are in most difficult situation at the moment among us, and I am using this word among us, European Union member countries, Eastern Partnership countries. And I wish to our friends all the success, and I wish them enough strength and ability to make wise decisions in order to overcome this crisis. At the same time, it's more than clear that our Ukrainian friends will not be able to deal with difficulties if the democratic world is not united. And that's the most encouraging fact, to see that the European Union is united. European Union is united much more, much better than it was in 2008 after August invasion of Georgian territories by Russian military forces. Unfortunately, Georgian occupation was not enough alarm for democratic world to draw important lessons. This is not the blame. We understand how difficult it is, even now, to think about those measures which the European Union, United States are implementing and are thinking to implement in future. But at the same time, it is more than clear that if anybody in the current world will be allowed to go against international law and international order, and that country will stay without punishment, this will be repeated again, and again. Unfortunately, we saw that since August 2008, the business with Russian leadership went to its normal style. And if you look back how the life was going 5-6 months ago, you would hardly notice anything remains of those problems. The world somehow decided to live with Russia, who was not implementing treaties, agreements, including President Sarkozy facilitated agreement about peace in Georgia. I believe it should not be repeated. And we Georgians are glad to see that our Ukrainian friends are getting more and proper support in this difficult time. At the same time, we Georgians do not want to become a problem for the rest of the world. We want to be partners in order to deal with the problems which bothers the rest of the world. Because any violation of international law, any violation of the internationally recognized borders is not the problem of one single country. This is our understanding of the current world, and that's why we do not feel ourselves guilty in involving our European friends in anything which they are not going to be involved otherwise. Because that's what we learned from Europe. Because that's what we learned, how countries and nations overcome the problems from the past, and how the nations decided to live together. Because if you look on the map of the Europe and go in history, you can find dozens of reasons why countries should not be working together or living together. And that was achieved after recognizing those basic principles. That's the only thing we request from the democratic world. I am glad that the Vilnius summit was successful for Georgia. Despite difficulties, despite problems, despite some skepticism from some of our friends from Europe, that after the change of the government in 2012, there were some expectations that Georgia may change its course of development, may change its direction in international development. You see that it did not happen. At the moment in Georgian parliament, there are represented political parties who are competing to each other, not about to join Europe or to join Russia. They are competing, and we are competing about who is more pro-NATO, who is pro-European, and who wants more to join Europe. This is the political situation of the country, but that's not our decision. That's not our politicians' decision. This is the decision of Georgian nation, Georgian society. And I would not call it decision even. This is just destiny. Because our feeling is that we have never left Europe. We were taken out from the European development by the force. And now we just want to come back. Therefore, I must let to you know that there is no such question in Georgia, whether Georgia is a European country or European state, or Georgians are European nation. We are Georgian country and European country, and we are European state. And we are not going to allow to decide who we are to Moscow. But at the same time, we are not going to allow to anybody to make decision about that in Brussels as well. We are Europe. And when we are saying this, we are not saying that Georgia should be accepted to the European Union tomorrow. Because Europe for us is much bigger, much more than the European Union. And I believe the members of the European Union should find proper mechanisms to have proper cooperation, proper interaction with the countries who consider themselves as Europe. Membership may come or may not come. That's not the issue at the moment on the table. Best demonstration of such possible creative thinking is this Eastern Partnership program, which was launched a few years ago. And we see that it appeared to be successful. And please do not count at the moment how many countries are signing the agreement and how many are not signing yet. The very fact that this issue has become so important for the between the democratic world and Russia, it indicates that this was the right project. And sooner or later, I believe all the countries will make their free choice and join this program. More is necessary. More is necessary because the game is not over. We, in Georgia, we are not surprised after seeing the actions of Russia in Ukraine, because everything was suggesting that that would happen, or something like that would happen. Now, the measures the democratic world is taking should be better focused. We hear that defense capability of NATO countries and European Union countries will be increased and defense budget will be growing and so on. Well, it seems that this is absolutely necessary at the moment. But it is true also that weapons and armies can guarantee peace only until the next war. It's something else which can guarantee the peace forever. It is democracy. And we urge you to increase your efforts, your spending, your time and energy to be directed to democratization of the neighborhood countries, including Georgia. Because only democratic countries and established democracies can secure the world from disasters. In that regard, I want to tell you that Georgia is not a beacon of democracy, as it was portrayed a few years ago. No, the mission is not completed in Georgia, but we are on the right direction. We are still far to be beacon, but we want to become democracy. We want to build democratic institutions. We want to increase freedoms of the citizens of Georgia. And in that regard, your help is essential. This is the area where I would direct most of the efforts and spending of the European Union in the coming decade or so, without measuring from the geographical point of view who is closer to the center of Europe and who is far from the center of Europe. If countries and nations are expressing this willingness, I believe everybody needs to use this momentum. The other subject I wanted to touch today is something different, probably not directly connected to the European Union, but is very closely connected. It's NATO and NATO integration of Georgia. We had referendum, real referendum, unlike from some referendums conducted in recent months here in Eastern Europe. And Georgian people expressed their willingness to become part of NATO. The polling conducted a few weeks ago by IRI, International Republican Institute, suggested more than 80% of citizens support Georgia's NATO membership. This is the current situation. And this is not only because of deep understanding of Georgian citizens of the basic values of the NATO. I'm very honest to you about that. This is something else. This is very deep understanding that without NATO protection of Georgia, Georgia may disappear from the map again. And that could happen very soon. Therefore, this is a matter of being or not being. It's not a matter of choice. That's why we urge you to do everything possible in order to come up with some creative decisions during the NATO summit in September. In 2008, in April, NATO member states came to the consensus, very hard consensus because the difference in opinions was huge, that Georgia will become NATO member. And nothing more, just period there. No mechanism, no instruments, nothing. I believe this was one of the contributors to August 2008 military action of Russia to Georgia, because the political decision, not being accompanied by anything else, resulted in such things. Now we are even in a more difficult moment, and we hear this thinking that if Georgia makes a step forward to NATO direction, it could annoy Russia, and they can make another steps towards aggression. Well, we take that there is risk in such things, but then we need to have answer on the other kinds of risks. What we are going to do if Georgia becomes next target. And again, I don't think that it's only about Georgia. We don't think that it's only about our security. I believe this is about whether Europe will have free access not only to South Caucasus, but to Central Asia and the region beyond, or not. And I believe we all together can find proper answers on this. From our side, from the side of Georgian Parliament and government, we can promise that we will be more reliable partners, more predictable partners than we used to be some time ago. Because we understand that we need to coordinate all our decisions with you. And we see this readiness from your side, we see the climate, we see the spirit here during this conference as well. And because of that, I'm going to my country with more enthusiasm that the solutions will be found. Georgia will become closer to Europe. Georgia will become NATO member at some point. And Russia will become democracy at some point as well. And this will be the long-term solution of this problem. Thank you.